Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the last of the teachings on the 59 slogans of Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje, given by Ngakma Nor'dzin. I'm your administrator for this evening. If you have any questions at any time, you can either raise a hand on Zoom or ask a question in the Zoom group chat, and the question will be asked at some appropriate moment. So over to Ngakma Nor'dzin for this evening's teaching.
Thank you. I don't know if I switch the speaker on for this chat. So this evening we have arrived at the final point of the 7 points of mind training, and there are a lot of slogans in this point, so we're not going to be able to spend a great deal of time on each slogan, but this last section of mind training is advice to the committed practitioner. So this is advice, this is just tinkering with things, really, just reminders about how to stay on this path of mind training. And Ngakpa is going to quickly read the summary of these 21 points. Well, not too quickly.
Practice all the teachings with the single intention of benefiting others, reversing all misfortunes. Begin and end well, being patient with whatever occurs, and guard awakening view and intention, even at the risk of your life. Train in the 3 difficulties and embrace the 3 principal causes of awakening, ensuring that they never deteriorate. Keeping body, speech, and mind inseparable, train deeply and pervasively in all areas without prejudice, and once mind training is perfected, cherish everyone and everything everywhere. Always practice with whatever makes you boil, and refrain from being distracted by external circumstances. This time, make practice the priority, without falsifying and perverting, and practice consistently, completely immersed in mind training. Escape duality through investigation and analysis. Without being boastful, jealous, or frustrated, practice diligently for its own sake, without wishing for thanks.
Thank you. So the first 2 slogans in this point are quite clearly connected with each other. Practice all the teachings with a single intention, and reverse all misfortunes with a single intention. So this single intention is the intention to awaken, and be of benefit to everyone and everything everywhere. And this single intention, because it's the root of our practice, it cuts all the attachment, all the negativity, all our delusions. It completely enables us to enter this path of practice wholeheartedly and to be of benefit to others. So the first thing is being reminded that that's why we're practicing mind training. That's why we're doing it. That is the whole point of the teachings, to have this single intention of cutting at the root this belief in a self-existent self-existent identity that has to be maintained and supported and protected, and instead having this intention to realize that others, that everything that is not this illusory I is actually what is important and will make a difference to us and enable us to awaken. The next slogan is both first and last, 2 things to do. And this is a reminder to start well and check how you did. So we start the day with practice. Even if you're not able to actually engage in a meditation session first thing when you practice, if you are attempting to practice dream yoga, then the first thing you will do is sing the syllable ah and visualize it dissipating into space. So that's starting with practice. If that's not a practice you're doing at the moment, then simply remember that practice is what is important in life. Practice mantra for a few moments or something, but always try and start the day remembering mind training, remembering practice, and make that setting the intention for the day. Today is going to be a day that I'm a practitioner. Today is going to be a day where even if life is absolutely full of other things that get in the way of formal practice, I'm still going to remember I'm a practitioner. And then at night, before you go to sleep, just check it out. How did you do? Did you remember to be a practitioner? Remember to notice what wasn't so good, but don't dwell on that. Let that go. Notice what was good, how you were a practitioner for the day, and celebrate that. So this is just a reminder to start the day well and end the day well by just checking how you did. And at that point, you can also generate the intention that tomorrow will be a day of practice as well. Now, in this section, this last section of the teachings, there's quite a few slogans that refer to 2 or 3 or 1 without any specifics, any specification of what those are. So this is very much a section that you need to become familiar with. You need to know what they're referring to. So this next one is whichever of the 2 occurs, practice patience. And so the 2 that might occur are good circumstances or not so good circumstances. Good circumstances that make you happy, you're finding enjoyable, things seem to be going well, the sun's shining, you've had a nice meal, whatever it is, you've had a good practice session, whatever that is, that you may feel that's good. Or maybe you wake up in the morning and everything goes wrong. You get out of bed and knock your drink over, which goes all over the bed, so you have to change the bed. And then you slip as you go downstairs and end up breaking your shoulder, or as happened to a student of ours recently, fell and broke her shoulder. That you meet somebody and they're nasty to you, everything can seem to go wrong. Or maybe, as is more normal in life, there's a bit of both, some good, some bad. But this slogan is reminding us not to let that throw us off balance, not to let either the good or the bad throw us out of the seat of mind training. Although it may seem that having a life that is full of what we would regard as good things would be the ideal, that is not necessarily true, because then we might get too relaxed and too complacent and lose that impetus to practice. If everything is too bad, then that can be discouraging and difficult to deal with. So having this balance between the 2, which most of us will find our lives are full of these, but a bit of this, a bit of that. We practice patience with both. Patience in the sense that we don't think, oh, everything's going to be brilliant now. Things are going well, that's it, going to be all right now. Or, oh, everything's going badly now. Everything's going to be terrible and it's going to be the worst day of my life. That is just allowing oneself to become unseated. So we practice patience with good circumstances, bad circumstances, and find some something to transform there, something to use as practice, something to appreciate, something to engage with, whatever is going on. Now the next one also refers to two. Guard the two even at the risk of your life. Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje does not specify what the two are. And in most of the commentaries on the slogans, the two are given as refuge and bodhicitta. So that's refuge, relying on the teacher, teachings and the path, and the community of practitioners at the sutric level. And bodhicitta is this intention to be of benefit to all beings. But if we look back at the second point of mind training and look at what the primary focus of that one was describing the path of awakening, the two that are mentioned predominantly there are awakened view and awakened intent. That we should dwell in awakened view and we should continually engage with awakened intent. So I feel that it's most likely that these are the two that Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje is referring back to in this advice to committed practitioners. Now, even at the risk of your life, that is quite an extreme statement. That is quite strong. So that is saying that this life is not actually the be-all and end-all of your path of practice. And to abandon your practice for the sake of saving this life ultimately is not sensible. That in actual fact, the thread of your practice is more important than this physical existence. Because from the perspective of the Buddhist teachings, we have existed going back into infinity, and our stream of consciousness will continue forwards into infinity. So the end of this physical manifestation of this consciousness is really just a blink of the eye in terms of the infinite length of the stream of consciousness. The next slogan, number 44, is train in the three difficulties. And this is referring to karma, because the three difficulties are the difficulty of seeing the moment of perception, the difficulty of catching the habitual response, and the difficulty of cutting the flow of habitual perception and response. Now, I find it really very inspiring and extremely refreshing to have this slogan in this body of teachings, because most of what you will read about in terms of karma in most books talks about cause and effect rather than perception and response. It talks about having causes in the stream of existence and creating causes that produce effects, whereas looking at karma from the perspective of perception and response makes it immediate. It brings it right into the present moment. And that is the nature of karma. That karma, it isn't some sort of baggage that we carry around that affects us. It is simply that there are patterns that we are not necessarily aware of, that there are patterns that are so much there that we don't even recognize that there's been a moment of perception, and the decision to respond in line with the pattern. That some of these patterns are so deeply entrenched in us that they seem to be automatic. So what this slogan is telling us is that we can actually cut karma in the moment, that we can learn to not allow that to continue. So we need to see the moment of perception, and that is about developing sufficient spaciousness to see it. And that is putting us back on our cushions, that we have to practice practices that are about developing spaciousness of mind in order to see that moment of perception. And then we need more spaciousness to catch the moment of entering or the arising of the habitual response. And then, even if we've managed to catch that moment of the habitual response, it's the difficulty of actually cutting it, of actually recognizing that entering the habitual response is actually a decision, and we can decide not to do that. It feels so automatic, it's so difficult. That's why he calls them the three difficulties. But through a practice that develops spaciousness of mind, it is possible to overcome these three difficulties. And then karma is no longer created or no longer manifests, because there will be direct perception and intelligent, aware response to that perception, response that is in line with awakening, and then more karma. The next one, in fact, the next two relate to the same point, which is embrace the three principal causes and practice so that these three do not deteriorate. Now, the three principal causes are the teacher, the teaching, and circumstances that are conducive to practice. So these are the three roots of Tantra. The teacher has to be there. There has to be the opportunity to receive teachings from that teacher, and the attitude of mind to be able to receive those teachings in terms of understanding and willingness to change in order to realize those teachings, and the conducive circumstances so that we have got time to practice, we have got the capacity to enter retreat, and so on and so forth. And our practice, we remember the benefit of these three, the teacher, the teaching, and the conducive circumstances, and practice so that these will never deteriorate. We hold that in our hearts as being very important to us. Then the next one, confusingly, says keep the three inseparable, but is not referring to the previous three. The three that need to be kept inseparable here are body, speech, and mind. And these are inseparable because they are Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya, Chaku, Longku, Tulku. They are the three spheres of being as we experience them in terms of our manifestation as a human being at the moment. So if we're engaged in practicing, wishing to benefit others, but we slander, we lie, we say negative things about people, this is not conducive. This is saying, well, I can be a Buddhist with my mind, I can be a Buddhist with my body, but speech, not bothering with that one. This doesn't work. All three aspects of our being have to be part of our practice, have to be engaged in our practice. So we look after our bodies so that our bodies can be relaxed and alert and vibrant when we're practicing. We look at after our actions and our speech so that the way we engage with others is congruent with being a person who's awakening. And we practice meditation so that our minds are developing correct view and able to engage with the teachings and awaken. So many of these are very much connected to an awareness of the Noble Eightfold Path, although it's not specified in these teachings. This is a thread that seems to come up again and again, this idea of developing view, making sure that mind, speech, body, life circumstances align with that view, the way we live our lives align with that view, and so that there is then attention and alertness and presence, which again adds to view, and so it goes round and round. And also remembering the 8 worldly dharmas, pleasure, pain, meeting, parting, those 8 that we can tend to fall into when life circumstances are either nice or negative, pleasure, pain, and it's that oscillation between them. If we keep the 3 inseparable, body, speech and mind, then we will make sure that our practice is always aligned with awakening in every aspect. Oh, time's going by so fast. Train without prejudice in all areas, deeply and pervasively, and once perfected, cherish everyone and everything everywhere. Well, this one speaks for itself. Get to know the teachings, practice them diligently and with deep awareness, and cherish everyone and everywhere, because they are the source of practice. It's everybody else that gives you the opportunity to engage in practice. Next one is always practice with whatever makes you boil. This is very much remembering back to, from the previous point, slogan 27, always practice with the strongest afflicted emotion first. So if something is really riling you up, then that is clearly something you need to work with. This is just logical. So if something always makes you angry, then that pattern for you of being riled up by that stimulus, look at it, see what you can do about that. How can you change your view? How can you work with that emotional state? That is your life pointing you in the direction of how to practice transformation. Refrain from being influenced by external circumstances. So again, this is not allowing circumstances to throw you out of the saddle of mind training. Don't worry about others' opinions, forget about grievances, don't worry about whether things are good or bad. That whatever they are, they're an opportunity to practice, and don't let life distract you from practice. So many of these, they're reminding us of previous slogans. The next one is interesting, number 51. This time, make practice the priority. Now, Chekhawa Yeshé Dorje doesn't specify what he means by this time. It could mean this life. It could mean this practice session. It could mean in this circumstance that you haven't dealt with so well before. It could mean this moment. It could mean this in-breath. It could mean anything that could be this. And how small this is or how big this is will depend on what the circumstance is and your capacity for practice. So first of all, you may need to look at this time, make practice the priority in terms of some sort of sense of an event in your life or an occurrence in your life. But ultimately, it's like every moment, it expands into great time. So every moment, this time I'm going to make practice the priority. And because practice becomes the priority in every moment, then every moment automatically becomes practice. And once every moment becomes practice, then awakening is happening in every moment. So that is a very simple slogan, but very powerful. Number 52. Refrain from falsifying and perverting. So this is a reminder of previous slogans such as not perverting the meal, not turning gods into demons, and remembering to act with honor, dignity, and impartiality. So if there's anything that we're just sort of twisting things slightly, or we're making things a little bit more convenient, but it's no longer still the clear and simple path of practice, just notice if you're doing that. Because there's the danger there that you put a kink in your practice that stops it being a clear, straightforward, simple path towards awakening. Refrain from being sporadic. What is your practice habit? Have a look at it. Is it rather now and then, or is it consistent that there's practice every day? Do you practice a long time some days and don't really practice at all other days? There's no judgment here, except that being sporadic can tend to be a problem for us as human beings, because human beings have this quality of patterning, that we establish patterns. It's a good idea to establish practice as a pattern, because establishing practice as a pattern will undermine other patterns that are maybe not quite so helpful. So try and have that consistency, regularity, frequency. Just try and keep that as a thread in terms of practice. Check how much you are gripped by mind training. Do you love your practice? Do you see the benefits of your practice? Do you cherish your practice because you see how you are changing, how you're a nicer person, how you're easier to be with, that you enjoy life more, that you're able to appreciate more? If these sort of things are happening in your life, then practice has gripped you. If you love the way you're changing and you become more relaxed about changing as a person, if when difficult life circumstances come along, they don't throw you off balance as much as they used to, then you can be sure that you're gripped by your mind training, that you're gripped by your practice, because this will just grow and grow and grow in terms of your enjoyment of life, your ability to be there and be kind and helpful to other people, and to just being able to let go of the priority of the me project. Escape duality through investigation and analysis. I think this is quite an interesting one, because this is reminding us that the practice of emptiness, or of developing a emptiness, shine or calm abiding, is essential. Analysis and investigation also has its place. So study, actually using thought in terms of your practice, in terms of analysing your practice, looking at what is going on, is also valuable. So emptiness is essential, but there's also a place for form, that there are aspects of being a practitioner that involve using the mind in an investigative and analytical manner. Avoid boastful behaviour. This is perhaps, you might not sort of think of, well, why would a practitioner be boastful? But if I've seen a lot of boastfulness, I'm sure we both have, in terms of people at retreat centres can get quite full of themselves if they are regular attendees, and perhaps they've received quite a lot of empowerments and they know quite a lot of technical language and so on and so forth. And it can get a bit sort of show-offy, that you know the technical language and you know what the teacher means when they say that and this, that, the other. And this sort of slightly smug, boastful quality can creep into your practice if you're not careful. So here Chekhawa is just reminding you that if you're doing that, you're actually turning your practice into a me project. You're turning your spiritual practice into a spiritual me project. This reminds me of the one that talks about being natural. If you're adopting this artificial personality as a practitioner, then this isn't a useful way to look at things. This isn't a useful way to behave. This is not going to help you awaken as a practitioner. This is not going to help you be empty in relation to the needs of another being. So boastful behavior is not the way to be as a practitioner. And this next one is very similar to it, because these are both about looking at where you are and where others are. So talking about self and other. And this one is avoid being bound by jealousy and frustration. I think the use of the word bound here is interesting. I looked into the translation of this slogan quite deeply, worked with lots of different dictionaries and asked people about the translation here, because bound is not actually the most obvious word to connect with jealousy and frustration, because jealousy and frustration are usually connected with the air element. And the air element is the energy that is unbounded in many ways. It has that quality of all-accomplishing activity. However, when we constrict the air element, then its capacity to have this expansive view becomes bound. It becomes tight, and it takes on this quality of having to check the other people all the time. So I have to check that they're not achieving more than me or getting on better than me. Or if I see that they are doing better than me, I get jealous about it. So there's a lot of energy there, but the energy becomes constricted in the sense of it doesn't accomplish anything, because it's been constricted in this narrow channel of me. If you can just let go of the me, then the jealousy turns into appreciation. Ngakpa has often said, this is one of Ngakpa's wonderful teachings, that jealousy is having gone one stop too far on the train. So you got to appreciation, you probably should be saying this, not me. You got to appreciation, but then you saw that they'd got it and you hadn't. So you went on to the next station where you became jealous. Did I say that okay?
Yeah, indeed. And you can always catch the next one back to appreciation again.
And frustration is similar, because you can see what could be achieved and you really appreciate what could be achieved, but you're not quite managing to do it. And so there's that constriction there. So this is how you're binding the air element. You're limiting what could be achieved through that amazing energetic quality of the air element. Now, I have a nice little anecdote here of something that Rinpoche once said in a teaching. This is from my personal notes on that teaching. And he was talking about Vajra pride, which is connected with this. So if you feel that you are the Yidam, then that's brilliant. That's what we want to achieve, is feeling that we are the Yidam, the awareness being. And if that feeling of being the Yidam means that you believe you have an infinite capacity for kindness, for tolerance, infinite wisdom, that's fabulous. That's Vajra pride. But if your feeling of being the Yidam is making you feel I should be worshipped, then that's not so good. That is not Vajra pride. That is me project again. So it's just Chekhawa here is just reminding us that it's so easy to pervert something. It's so easy to twist it just slightly, and you've almost got it right, but you haven't. And so it's just giving us that advice to remember that. So it's me manifesting as Yeshé Dorje, but Yeshé Dorje isn't me. I have to let go of me. I have to allow me to dissolve and just be Yeshé Dorje. And then you don't have to worry about any of the problems of delusion or anything, because she doesn't have any of that. Number 58, refrain from practicing just a little. Well, this is similar to refrain from being sporadic, but this is perhaps talking more about within a session, perhaps. So we've always said to new practitioners, start with 10 minutes of meditation a day. 10 minutes every day, establish that as a pattern of practice. That is a really good thing to do. But it needs to increase. 10 minutes a day in the length of a lifetime is not going to get you enlightened. It's not going to awaken you fully. It needs to increase. I think I've heard Tibetan teachers say a minimum of an hour a day becomes a necessity. You need to be able to apply that sort of level of time to your practice. This is formal practice, to really start to achieve anything. And you need to add in some solitary retreat as well. Yes, your daily practice, if it stays at 10 minutes, it's not a waste of time. Don't ever think that practice is a waste of time. It will increase. But if you're serious about this time, this life, making something truly happen in terms of awakening, then practicing just a little is not going to be enough. One has to actually embrace practicing a little bit longer and also putting in some solitary retreat time as well. And then the last slogan, I think we'll then have about a quarter of an hour to talk about how to practice. The last slogan translates as "do not wish for thanks." Now, Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche's interpretation of this slogan is "do not expect applause." And I so wanted the Tibetan to translate as "do not expect applause," but it didn't. That is his inspiration, his inspirational teaching, that was the way to translate it for the people he was teaching at that time. Don't expect applause. But the actual words of this slogan in the text that I translated was "do not wish for thanks." So that's what I put in the book. But what this is saying is, don't expect a pat on the back. Don't expect people you are helping through your practice to be grateful to you. Don't expect them to even notice. Because if them noticing, them thanking you, anybody applauding you is your motivation for practice, then you've gone off on a side street. You're actually working on the me project. You've turned the me project into some sort of spiritual project, but it's still the me project. So we practice for the sake of practice. We practice because we recognize that there needs to be change. We recognize that we're asleep. We recognize that we're deluded. We recognize that our habit patterns of perception and response create responses that hurt people, that hurt ourselves. We recognize that we aren't able to appreciate certain aspects of the circumstances that come our way. And so we practice because we see that practice makes a difference to all that. We practice because we want to change, we want to awaken, and we see that the teachings offer that opportunity. So that is why we practice, not for thanks, not for applause. It's always nice to get some thanks and praise sometimes. And if that comes along, then enjoy it. But don't then turn that into becoming boastful and add it to the me project. And I think as long as there isn't that expecting it, then when it arises, it can be quite empty and joyful. I think I don't drive anymore. We don't have a car anymore. But this slogan used to pop into my mind so often that you let somebody out in a queue, you'd let them go ahead of you. And if they didn't wave a thank you, you think, oh, I don't know why I bothered. There's that feeling of, I didn't get my thank you, so I wish I didn't do it. We need to let go of that sort of attitude. It's poison. It's poisonous food. So that isn't a motivation to do something. We do something because it's a nice thing to do. It's a kind thing to do. Whether they acknowledge it or whether they even notice it, that you've done it, is irrelevant. You do it because you're trying to benefit others. Good. No questions? No hands up?
No.
So I don't know if 15 minutes is too long to go through this, but I thought I'd allow a full 15 minutes because I'm hoping there will be questions now about how to practice in terms of using the slogans. So I'm sure you all know, but you can buy the book Battlecry of Freedom from Arab Books Worldwide. And this has the commentaries to all the slogans in there. So that is a complete thing in itself that you could work from. But we've also produced the cards, Battlecry of Freedom slogan cards. Sorry, I'm quite a long way from the camera, so I don't know if you can see that. And these come in a pack, a shrink wrap pack like this. And I've also designed a nice little box that you can buy off the same people to keep your cards in. Now, unfortunately, the printers that we use to publish the books of Arab Books Worldwide couldn't offer us anything like making cards. So these are made by a company called makeplayingcards.com. But there is a link to where to buy these at Lulu, at Arab Books Worldwide on lulu.com. So you can just click on that and it takes you straight there for buying the slogan cards. So there are various ways that you can use these cards, the slogan cards. And there are three primary ways. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a way that I've recently started using them that is a personal choice, and you can look at that if you wish. So the first one, if you're new to these teachings, I would suggest that this is a good way to start, which is just go through the slogans one at a time in the order in which they are given, and just familiarize yourself with them in that way. The second method is that you got your pack of cards, you shuffle them, and then you take the top card, and then you read that card. And if you want to, you can go and look at the more detailed explanation in the book. And then you go through the cards one at a time, day by day, in that shuffled pack as it is. So that's the second method. The third method is that you shuffle the pack every day. So that means, by the law of statistics, you may never see some of the cards, or you may see some surprisingly frequently. And whether that works as a method for you probably depends on your view of form and chaos, order and chaos. That there's a chaotic quality to doing that, but there also may be, you could have the eternalistic view that the world is telling you something by the card that has come up. And I think if you decide to look at it in that way, then you have to hold that very lightly, because Buddhism rejects eternalism as much as it rejects nihilism. So the fact that a card keeps coming up for you could be significant, or it could just be the chaos of the universe. The fact that a card never comes up for you could be significant, or it could be the chaos of the universe. So I would hold that very lightly about the significance of that. Now, there are 59 of them, so we're talking 2 months of practice if you look at a card a day. So that's quite a long period of time, really. I've found that I often don't want to change the card as often as every day, so it couldn't be an even longer period of time. So that will be a decision that you need to make. So the new method that I have recently started, it just came to me as an idea. It's not that anybody's taught me this method, and so it's an entirely personal way of working with the cards, is that I actually look at 2 cards a day, or 2 cards whenever I decide to change them. And I've taken out the first 16 slogan cards. So those are the cards of points 1, 2, and 3. So these are the cards, the 1 slogan of preliminary practice, the slogans of the awakening, the principles of awakening, and the slogans that are the path of awakening. So these are those 16 cards, and I shuffle these every day. I haven't done it today, or every other day, or every third day, whatever feels like it for me. And I shuffle these, and I look at one of them. So the one that has come up to me today is practice gratitude to everyone and everything, everywhere. Now, the reason for doing that is that the first 3 points of mind training are encompass the path. They encompass view, meditation, and action. They encompass the essential points of what we need to know in order to awaken. And so I felt I needed to see those a bit more often. I needed to see those, to be reminded of those a little more frequently. Whereas the rest of the slogans, whatever 16 is from 15, 9. 43, yep. The other 43, they're like reminders of those 16. They're refinements of how to work with those 16. So what I do with these is I don't shuffle them. You could shuffle them if you wanted to, but I decided not to shuffle them. I shuffle them at a point, and now I just take whatever is the next one. So my next one for today is apply the 5 perfect powers. So the strap line for this is ride confidently so the horse has a leader, ride actively so the horse is supported, ride with presence so the horse is relaxed, ride with attention so the horse and environment are embraced, ride with awareness so the dimension of riding is engaged. So these cards, they have the short, pithy message on each of them that relate to the slogan. So that's my new way that I'm practicing with them. The 16 slogans that I shuffle every day and look at one of them, and the, what was it, 43 that I don't shuffle, that I just work through one at a time. So whenever I decide to change my cards, I'm actually looking at 2 of them rather than looking at one of them. So it's just an idea. I'm sure there are many other ways that you could work with slogan cards, and you may find your own choice arises as you practice with them. But those are the methods that I have looked at. So it's 5 to 7. We have 5 minutes for.
It's actually 3 minutes too.
Oh, is it? Is that clock?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
right, you have 3 minutes to ask questions, which isn't very long, but nevertheless, that's quite good timing actually in terms of getting through the teachings that we need to look at today.
Aha. Right, we have a question from Chris. Would you recommend using them, I think he means the cards in this case, as a basis for group teaching?
Yes, I think that would be a good thing to do, but I think you'd need to be very familiar with them, very familiar with the whole body of the teaching. I don't know whether you're thinking of you teaching them, or whether it would be a sort of like sharing the teaching situation where people give their different ideas on what that slogan means to them. I don't know what you were thinking of there, but basically,
as in partaking of the teaching.
Yes, I think they would work well in terms of partaking of the teachings. But if people are not familiar with the slogans, there would need to be somebody there who either had a book, doesn't necessarily need to be my book or my version of the slogans, my translation of the slogans, but there would need to be some sort of background basis there that you could look things up or something, I think, because if keep the three inseparable came up and nobody had any idea what that meant, then that's not going to be very useful, I think. So, but basically, yes, good. You could invite us down to Cornwall, Chris, and we'll come and do something when we're allowed to do things like that again. I think K-Drag was going to invite us down. In fact, I know he had planned to do that, so perhaps that'll happen one day.
One day. One more minute, coming.
So any other questions? I hope you've all enjoyed these 6 sessions. I have certainly very much enjoyed having this opportunity to talk about the practice I'm gripped by.
No, all done, I think, for now. I'm sure you're not expecting to be thanked for this, but I feel that I'd be speaking on behalf of the wonderful audience here if I say thank you, Ngakma Nor'dzin, for these teachings. It's been wonderful for me to be sitting here listening to these teachings and being part of that, and I'm sure everybody else has appreciated it too.
Well, thank you all for coming, and I hope my enthusiasm has come across that I just love these teachings.